Hi guys, this is Raquel with Paints and Glitter, and I welcome you back to the second part of this mini album tutorial. I'm just going to jump right on in and let you know how I am working on this book. I've used a 110 piece of cardstock here that I'm folding with a 1-inch hinge that I created with my scoreboard, and I'm going to be overlapping this with a die that will allow me to create my first interactive element of this mini album. As you can tell there, I did overlap that, allowing me to cut this without cutting that fold, and then to decrease the size of this just on the corner there to avoid any bulk. I'm just cutting off some pieces at a 45-degree angle. And here you're going to see how I will be using this. I've taken my designer piece of paper that I selected for my first page, flipping it over, I am able to then measure out where I will be placing this hinge. So I just use my ruler there to measure out the distance from the top, bottom, and side of that page so that I can use my knife. And with this, I'm able to cut just a thin slit here, and this will allow me to insert that hinge right into that piece of paper without having that one piece show. So I'm able to hide that then behind there with some strong adhesive, and I will apply this so that I can then open and close that element of my page, and making sure that it's nice and straight. I like to look at the front of it first and then go ahead and fold that. And once it's burnished, it's adhered. And I am also using these little tabs, and they are from the Keepsake Bookmaker tabs and Paperclip collection by Tonic Studios. I've cut those out in a nice gold color, and as you can tell there, I marked my page where I wanted them, and I'm using some gold brads just to insert those onto that base page. And this is going to be how I can close that little element. And it adds interaction, of course, which is always fun in a mini album. Now, whenever I add any metal or plastic to any pages, I'd like to reinforce it. So that's why I've added the dry adhesive here. It's quite strong. And then I'm going to follow that through with my art glitter glue to adhere this panel right onto the base. That black piece of cardstock is what's going to adhere onto the base of my mini album. And you're going to see how I work in kind of like pairs or couples here. But this is going to be my very first page. And it's just a simple little element there. But then what I'll do is behind that page, I've added the more decorative piece of this, which is the die cut that I cut out of red paper. And I cut the same style out of that beautiful plaid. I'm placing that on top. And that's going to break up that stark white paper. And now what I'll do is I'm moving on to my second style of page here. And what I'll do is that I'm going to adhere this absolutely gorgeous designer paper here that has the poinsettias and the pine trees and all of those pine cones and all of that. That's going to go onto this piece of paper. And once it's adhered, I did have a little bit of an overlap. For some reason, this large die was creating that type of cut with my papers, but I don't complicate life. I just go ahead and cut off what I don't need and continue on. These other die cuts are from a different memory book collection. I will be linking these below. And I cut those out of 110-pound cardstock, and I want to use these on this page, and you'll see how. But I'm only placing a little bit of adhesive right on the edge. These will go on the edge of this paper, and I did ink those with antique linen Ranger ink just because I wanted to, of course, help it match that base paper. And I'm using my Tim Holtz glass mat that you see in the background to allow me to line that up perfectly. And here I'm using this medallion that I cut out of this pretty green cardstock to match, but I'm only using adhesive right on the edges there where it's going to overlap on the white cardstock, and that will allow me to create a belly band. So that die cut, by the way, is from Spellbinders, and I did also add the centerpiece there, but as you can tell, I only added adhesive onto the white cardstock, not the background piece. So that'll allow me to slide a picture or papers right behind that. Now that I have those 2 pages completed, what I'm doing here is lining up my page against the top and bottom, matching it up to the cover, and then I fold over that hinge, and here what I want to do is I'm also going to be making pockets out of every single one of these pages. So I'm adding my wet adhesive on the outermost part of that page, and on the bottom I make sure that I adhere that part first because I already measured out my very first page. And once I'm happy with how that is adhered onto that initial page there, and I burnish it quite well, then I take off the liner of that dry adhesive that's on that hinge, and I can now go ahead and adhere that. And that was as simple as can be. Now I'm repeating the same process here, and I slowed this down a tiny little bit just because I like watching tutorial videos, but making them for me is as much fun as it is. And I know that you guys value your time, and I do as well. I don't like to go so fast. It makes me a little bit dizzy. So I had to slow this video down and just in certain portions, just for the sake of not getting dizzy watching them myself. But here I'm applying again the same antique linen ink to this cardstock. I'm lining it up with the edge. And once that's lined up there, I can adhere it to that base page. And I'd like to mention also here that I am making matching pages here because of the fact that I like the way they looked together when they're inside of the book. There will be different page styles in this mini album, but they're just to keep it cohesive, especially since this paper is so busy. I wanted to make sure that I repeated certain elements, and you're going to see that in this mini album. So again, I'm repeating the same process here. I did forget, I guess, to add the ink initially, so I'd had to apply it there at the end. And this is going to end up looking the same as the previous one. However, when I decorate this and apply the other elements that are going to go on top, you're then going to see that they won't be absolutely identical because I will be using the pieces that I showed you in the very first video. So here's that front page. I added a little tag, a Christmas tree that I popped up there with foam, little stars and everything, and then here you go. Here are those pages. One of them, the medallion, you can barely even see anymore, and the other one had some other cute little elements there. But I'm moving on to the third style page here. I've used antique linen and barn door as the ink colors here. And on the base page, what I want to show you here is that I'm adding 2 little magnets. They are quite strong. However, I do like to make sure that if I'm going to add a magnet that it works. So I added 2, and I'm going to be covering these with the designer paper. Once I have that placed on top, it's going to, of course, cover the magnets, but it's going to be the base. And then I added this almost like a little notebook style page. That's going to be my interactive element on this page of this mini album. And then on top, the decorative piece. And you'll see in a moment how this all works. I created more little hinges here. In this case, what I'm doing is that I'm going to be popping in a little brad that I thought matched really nicely, but I removed those pieces first and then added the little black brad, but those metal pieces can be cumbersome. So what I do is I remove as much as possible with a wire cutter, and then I can adhere that closed, and that's going to be almost like a little door hinge or door pull, I should say. So here are the matching little magnets that are going to help me close this page. I put those on the very outermost portion there, and you see how this is coming along. I just wanted to make sure that that looked nice. So once I'm happy with my plan here, then I start adhering. That's going to go right on top. And that was also cut with the Mythical Glade Collection dies out of that glitter cardstock, and I just backed it up with the black. But this is going to go right on that page, and those magnets are working perfectly, but you don't see any bulk. Now here what I did was that I added that little element there with hot glue because I wanted to make sure it was nice and sturdy, since that will get the most use on that page. And then I just finished it off with a white piece of cardstock, and that's the one that I did use the ink on. Here I'm going to repeat the same exact process, and the difference will be that this will open on the opposite side, and you'll see once I'm done what I mean by that. And that way it creates a nice cohesive layout when it's all said and done, because the pages will open in opposite directions, and I hope that makes sense, but you'll see it when in a minute here when I'm done. So I'm applying again that decorative piece right on top, covering the magnets. It opens nicely, it closes nicely, and here again is that one little portion where I remove the excess metal, and it takes me forever. I try to edit these videos, but I sincerely have weak hands and I have to laugh at myself because I just try my best here, but there's my curly kinky hair in the way, by the way, so pardon me for that. I had a messy bun on that day. I do not get all dolled up to do these videos, so that's just me in my home with my messy bun. But anyway, back to the video here. I'm applying that very top portion to this page, and here you see they're twinsies, they match. I'm happy with that, and now they can go into the book. So again, I'm lining up that prior page or previous page by lining it up to the actual the page that's already there. I butt it up against that spine, and then I move the hinge forward. That allows me to place that page nicely in there without any problems. And now I can add the other pages again in a pocket style. So I'm matching that outermost portion first. And once you get the hang of it, it becomes quite easy. And once you make sure you line up those pages really nicely, then you can remove that portion that is the for the dry adhesive. Now I pulled a little bit hard on that, so I went ahead and added a little more wet glue there, and I burnished it nicely to make sure that that dries really great there. And I had I guess a little snag on my page, so I fixed that too while I was at it, and no problem there. My pages can open and close, and here you see how I finish that. I add this page, you see here's the final portion of it, and you can tell how I decorated those pages. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. Please come back to watch the rest, and you'll see how I finish this mini album, and I hope that you're enjoying it and that you can be inspired and be blessed. Have a beautiful day.